Hello friends, a very warm welcome to the Crochet Hook channel. Today we are going to learn how to crochet this beautiful, a very checkered and textured waffle stitch. As you have seen, it has a great texture and great strength and is a very closed pattern. The stitch is a repeat of 3 stitches and 2 rows and is a very simple pattern to work with. So let's get started with the pattern. So here I have taken acrylic wool of my choice and crochet hook of 3 millimeters. So let's get started with the pattern. As I've already mentioned, the stitch is a repeat of 3 stitches and 2 rows. To begin with, chain 35, so after completing a number of 35 chains here, skip 3 chains below, yarn over, and in the 4th chain from the hook, work 1 DC, yarn over, in the next chain, work 1 DC, yarn over, in the next chain ahead, work 1 DC, and we are just going to work 1 DC into each of the upcoming chains in this foundation row. This is the foundation row for the pattern. So here I have worked a total of 33 DCs, including chain 3 also as a DC here. For the row 1, chain 3 and turn the work, yarn over, around the next stitch below, work 1 FPDC like this. Yarn over, in the next stitch below, work 1 regular DC. So this is how we are going to start the row 1 each time. After we chain 3, we will work 1 FPDC around the next stitch and 1 regular DC in the next stitch. Afterwards, in the next stitch, around it work 1 FPDC. Yarn over, around the next stitch, work 1 FPDC. So 2 FPDCs made in 2 upcoming stitches. In the next stitch, work 1 regular DC, and this is the pattern repeat that will be repeated all through this row. 2 FPDCs, 1 regular DC, 2 FPDCs, 1 regular DC again. After this regular DC being made, work 1 FPDC in the next stitch below, work 1 more FPDC in the next stitch below like this. So total of 2 FPDCs worked. After 2 FPDCs, work 1 DC, regular DC in the next stitch. This is the 3 stitch repeat for row 1. Around the next stitch again, work 1 FPDC, 1. Around the next stitch, work the second FPDC, 2. And yarn over, in the next stitch, work 1 regular DC. So here we are just repeating 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 FPDCs, 1 regular DC, 2 FPDCs, 1 regular DC. In each of the upcoming stitches. Simple round. Just keep working like this till you reach the end. So here we chain 3, worked 1 FPDC around the next stitch and 1 regular DC in the next stitch, and then we continued the pattern 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 FPDC, 1 regular DC, 2 FPDC, 1 regular DC till the end. Here I have reached the last 3 stitches. So the last time pattern repeat is going to be made. 1 FPDC around the next stitch, 1 FPDC around the next stitch, and in the top third chain here, insert the hook and work 1 regular DC. So this ends this row 1 here. For the row 2, chain 3 and turn the work. Yarn over, in the next stitch, work 1 regular DC. Like this. Yarn over again, in the next stitch, work 1 regular DC. This is how you're going to start the row 2 each time. You climb for row 2, chain 3 and 2 regular DCs. And the pattern repeat is, in this rib showing up around this DC below, work 1 FPDC. Here 1 and 2 will be the repeat. So 1 FPDC and 2 regular DC next to it. So in the 2 stitches next to it, work 1 regular DC in each of the upcoming 2 stitches here like this. So 1 and 2, the repeat is done. In the next rib showing below, work 1 FPDC, and in the next 2 stitches just work 1 regular DC in each of the next stitches, 2 stitches here. So 1 FPDC, 2 regular DC. Again, time for 1 FPDC around the rib showing in the row below, and then work 2 regular DCs in the next 2 upcoming stitches like this. This is the pattern. Repeat for row 2, 1 FPDC, 2 regular DCs. 1 FPDC, we work around the FPDC showing up in the row below, and we work 2 regular DCs in the next 2 DCs below. So just keep working like this till you reach the end. Simple round, and just continue like this till you reach the end. So here I have almost reached the end. Going to work one more time the repetition here around this FPDC, work 1 FPDC, and then in the next 2 stitches we have 1 DC below, work 1 DC, regular DC, and in this top third chain inside the hook work 1 regular DC. So this finishes the row 2. This is the only pattern of 2 rows, and just keep repeating row 1, row 1, another till you reach your desired length. So again, let's practice a little more. For row 1, chain 3, turn around the next DC, work 1 FPDC. In the next stitch work 1 regular DC. This is how we always begin with row 1, and then we'll just continue with the repeats. 2 FPDC, 1 FPDC in the next stitch, yarn over, work 1 FPDC in the next stitch, yarn over, work 1 regular DC in the next stitch. This is our pattern repeat, simple. So 2 and 1, 2 and 1 this time in row 1. We continue like this. Again, 2 FPDCs in next upcoming stitches like this, and 1 regular DC in the next stitch below. Again, work 1 FPDC around the next stitch, 1 more FPDC around the next stitch, and then 1 regular DC in the next stitch. Simple. Around the next stitch work 1 FPDC, around the next stitch work 1 FPDC, and in the next stitch work 1 regular DC, and just continue like this till the end. So here I've reached the end of this round and working my last repeats. These are stitches we are going to work 2 FPDCs around whom. So just work 2 FPDCs in the next 2 stitches, and in this top third chain inside the hook work 1 regular DC. This is how we always end our row 1. This is how it looks on the front side. This is the back side. For the row 2, let's do it one more time. Chain 3, turn the work, and for row 2, first 2 stitches we chain 3 and we work 2 regular DCs in the next 2 stitches. So work 1 regular DC in the next stitch, yarn over, work 1 regular DC in the next stitch. This is how we begin with row 2, and then the pattern that we repeat is the rib that is showing below. Around this FPDC work 1 FPDC, and in the next 2 stitches we'll be working 1 regular DC in each of them, 1 regular DC, and in the next one work 1 DC. So the pattern repeat is 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Again 1 FPDC around the next stitch, yarn over, work 1 regular DC in the next DC, yarn over, work 1 regular DC in the next DC. This is the pattern repeat for row 2. Again, in this rib showing below, work 1 FPDC like this, yarn over, in the next stitch work 1 DC, 1 regular DC, yarn over, in the next stitch work 1 regular DC. Again we have this rib showing up, just work 1 FPDC around it. In the next 2 stitches just work 1 regular DC in each of the 2 stitches like this. This is a pattern repeat for row 2, simple. Just keep continuing 1 2 1 2 till you reach the end. I've reached the end here. worked my second last set of FPDC and 2 regular DCs. Again this rib is showing up. Around this work 1 FPDC and we have 2 stitches left. In the next DC below work 1 regular DC and in this top third chain insert the hook and work 1 regular DC. So this finishes our row 2 one more time, and this is the checkered texture that we get to see, and you can just continue working row 1 and row 2 till you reach your desired length, and the foundation row is just needed for the again. So here I'm going to add a new color or shade to the waffle stitch, and I prefer to add it in the very beginning of row 2. I have ended my row 1 having 2 loops of row 1 on the hook. This is how I'm changing the shade to purple, and then chain 3 and turn and then begin with the row 2. As usual, work 2 regular DCs in the beginning in the next upcoming 2 stitches, and then yarn over and work 1 FPDC around the FPDC showing in the row below like this, and just continue with the pattern 1 FPDC, 2 regular DC, 1 FPDC, 2 regular DC the same way. But while changing the shade in the beginning of row 2, it really gives a very beautiful, neat and clean change of color in this stitch. I'll just show you how it looks. See how clean the change in color looks, and then just continue the pattern the same way as we do for the row 2. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 FPDC, 2 regular DC, and then take it to any length like this.